Good evening, everyone, and welcome into our Rules of Golf webinar series. This is our third one that we are doing. I'm going to introduce myself and then we'll get started here in a few seconds. My name is Caleb McCall, and we're also joined by Amanda Braun. We are both part of the competitions department here at the VSGA. And just a few quick notes before we get started. I just wanted to say last week's presentation and the previous week, so our first two presentations, they are now on our website at vsga.org. If you navigate there and then head over to our resource center, you will be able to find a rules section there. And then if you click on that, you'll be able to see those two presentations. Tomorrow, we will post a presentation from today. You can go in and check both of those presentations out if you missed those weeks, and then you can also go back and check this one out as well. Tonight we will use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen for any questions that you guys have. If you do have any questions, please feel free to submit those as we go throughout the presentation. You don't have to wait until each section to submit those questions. We do have quite a bit to get through that Amanda has to present, so we will try to get to as many questions as we can. If we do not get to your guys' questions, we will reach out to you guys via email. And with that being said, I'll send it over to Amanda and she'll get us kicked off.
Great. Thanks, Caleb. And again, as he said, welcome everyone to our third week of the Rules of Golf presentations. Whether you're a first time or you've joined us the last 3 weeks, we appreciate you joining us tonight to learn a little bit more about the rules. So we'll get started here on this presentation. We're going to be covering all relief. So we'll start with our free relief options and end with our penalty relief options. So we'll start with Rule 16. Rule 16 really deals with moving the ball away from interference. So we'll kind of go through, see what this looks like and how you take relief in this way. Rule 16 is dealing with what this term is abnormal course conditions. Now, in the first 2 weeks, I think both presenters, Kent and Josh, mentioned the definitions and how important they are for the rules of golf. And this is really a good example of how the definitions can help you within the rules book. Abnormal course conditions is a defined term, but if you do go to that, you'll see exactly what's on this screen. There are these four different situations: animal holes, ground under repair, immovable obstructions, and temporary water. So, an animal hole, which each of these have their own definitions in the rules as well. An animal hole includes any loose material dug out of the hole, the track or trail into the hole, or any other ground altered by the animal in digging that hole underground. A ground under repair, that second image, is typically marked with white paint by the committee, but there are some exceptions that it does not have to be marked in order for it to be a ground under repair. For example, holes made by maintenance staff in setting up or maintaining the course is considered ground under repair, whether it's tractor tire marks or something that was obviously disturbed by the maintenance team. But these do not include aeration holes. That's not included and would not be granted as ground under repair. Materials piled for removal for later. So whether it's a pile of leaves or stones or sticks or whatever it is, big trees, as long as those are piled to be removed later and not something that's piled all the time, that would fall under ground under repair. And then the third one that doesn't necessarily have to be marked is an animal habitat that might be damaged by the player in making their stroke. So if there's a bird nest or something that's clearly where an animal is living and you would hit that with your stroke, whether it's the ball or with your swing, you in that case would be able to grant yourself ground under repair. That one's not super common, but it is written within the rules. Our next type of abnormal course condition is immovable obstructions. So these are any artificial things that are not meant to be part of the challenge of playing the game of golf. So typically we see these as cart paths or surfaced paths throughout the golf course. It could also be irrigation boxes or anything else that is clearly not able to be moved without causing damage to the course or the object. And that last image there, temporary water, some may remember it as casual water, but that was changed when the rules changed back in 2019. It makes more sense this way when you talk about casual water. It's not really known what that is. Temporary water kind of tells you exactly what it is. It's temporary accumulation of water that can be seen on the ground that's not normally there. So it's not a penalty area. It's water that's typically in the fairways or rough or anywhere on the course, even a putting green that's normally not there, but due to heavy rain or an irrigation leak or something along those lines. So moving on, in order to take relief from any of those four options, the relief procedure, as we'll see a little bit later, is the same. So even though those four things are completely different, the relief to get to the right place, again, this is free relief we're talking about here, you get there the same exact way. But the first thing you need to know is finding your nearest point of complete relief. So it's the estimated point where the ball would lie that is nearest to the player's original spot but not near the hole, in the required area of the course, and where there is no interference from the condition from which relief is being taken. So in this picture we have here, this player's ball is clearly on the cart path. Their stance is on the cart path, and they're clearly going to hit the cart path with their swing. In this case, he clearly has interference, and we need to find the nearest point where he doesn't have interference anymore. A bit further, we need to try to identify the club that this player would use, the stance that he would take, swing, and line of play if that obstruction wasn't there. So if I was a rules official coming into this situation, I would say, hey, we're about 150 yards out. What club would you normally use for this shot? He grabs whatever club that would be. We say, okay, now we're going to find the spot that's no closer to the hole where your feet aren't going to be interfering with the path, the ball won't be sitting on it, and your club won't hit it in any way, either with the backswing or follow through. So we do that on either side. In this case, it's a little bit tight or tough to try to figure out what's nearer. So we go to the left-hand side of the cart path. We see he's a right-handed player. His feet are off, that ball is off, and the club is not going to interfere with it. Just ask the player to let's put a tee down. Let's just see if this is nearer. We do the same exact procedure on the other side. So feet are off, the ball's off, and the club is not going to hit it. And then you look to where the original ball is and see which side is closer. Is it the left side or the right side? In this case, I'd say it's clearly the left side. That's going to be the nearest point of complete relief. And from there, we're able to figure out our relief area and move on. If this was a left-handed player, there's a good chance that he would be going to the right side of that cart path. But again, if it's like this situation and you're not 100% sure of what the nearest point is, do both sides and see which spot is closer. Now, if you've listened to our rules presentations before, you've probably heard us use the term the nearest point, not the nicest point. And this image does a really good job of telling you that it is truly the nearest. So this player's ball lies on the cart path again. It's a little bit more to the right side of that cart path. So his nearest point is in that tree or in that mulch area. So again, it's a good idea if you are a rules official or any player playing golf, leave that original ball where it is. It might be that that's the best place for you to play, and that's where you want to actually play the ball from. But it doesn't hurt to try to figure out where you're going to be dropping if you did want to take relief, since it is free. So in this situation, again, right-handed player, his feet are off the cart path. That club's not going to interfere with the cart path, and the ball wouldn't be on the cart path. That nearest point of complete relief for this player is in that mulch bed. From there, he would get, as you'll see, a one club length back and over in order to create his relief area. So he just needs to decide, is that what he wants to do for a free drop? Or in this situation, maybe hitting off that cart path is the best decision and no relief. He just plays it as it lies, and that's not a problem either. When we are talking about relief, we talk about interference. So there's a couple different ways that a player could have interference. Again, the simpler one is if the ball's touching or lies in or on the obstruction. In this case, that ball's lying in a drainage ditch. The next one could be if the player has interference from his intended stance or intended swing. It's his normal stance. He can't build a stance or try to make a stance a little bit wider or awkward just to try to get some advantage here. And same thing with the swing. It has to be reasonable that that's the swing the player would make if that obstruction or temporary water or ground under repair was not there. And the third one's a little tricky. You don't see it all too often, but you would get line of play relief for the putting green only if that abnormal course condition was between the ball and the hole. So that last picture there, we see this puddle. If you were that player who was unfortunate to hit it right in that little dry area or even in the puddle itself, that temporary water, if you would get line of play relief in this situation because your ball's on the putting green. As I kind of alluded to, there's always exceptions, and this rule has a couple of them as well. So some exceptions here, you would not get relief if your ball lies in a penalty area. So that top image, you see that immovable obstruction, that kind of bulkhead that's marked inside the penalty area, and that ball's right in the penalty area, lying on that kind of crevice between the bulkhead and the grass. Because that ball is in the penalty area, the rules are saying, sorry, we're not actually going to give you relief. But you do have penalty relief options in this situation, which we'll cover a little bit later tonight. You also wouldn't get relief if the abnormal course condition is out of bounds. So if you hit a ball close to an out of bounds line, that ball is actually lying and touching the course, so it's in bounds. But let's say there's a birdhouse that someone has built in their backyard, and it's a nice big post that's right on the edge of the property line. In that case, if that bird post is out of bounds, it's in that person's backyard, it is not on the golf course, the rules are going to say, sorry, we're not actually going to give you relief for an abnormal course condition that's lying out of bounds or not on the course. So you just have to play that ball as it lies. And the third one, as I kind of alluded to, if it's clearly unreasonable to play the ball, whether it's because of something else other than the abnormal course condition, or because you're choosing a club or a swing or a stance that is clearly unreasonable. So in that bottom picture, this player is clearly not taking his normal stance. He does not hit every shot like that. He's trying to put that foot on the cart path to try to grant himself relief to get away from that bush that his ball is in. In that situation, unfortunately, you would have to deny relief, and that player would have to just play the ball as they lie or take unplayable ball, which again, we'll cover a little bit later. Taking abnormal course condition relief, again, this is the same procedure, whether you're taking relief from animal holes or ground under repair or temporary water, all of them are the same. They look a little bit different as the images show, but we'll go through kind of the process. And that first step in finding relief is identifying a reference point. And as we kind of just learned, the nearest point of complete relief is that starting point. So where is the nearest point that you are no longer having interference with both your stance, your swing, and the lie of ball? Once you find that point, you get one club length, and it looks a little different in these two images, but you get one club length no closer to the hole. This rule does say you do have to stay in that same area of the golf course that your ball lies. So general area needs to stay in general area, bunker needs to stay in bunker. And then we're going to drop the ball in the relief area. As we learned last week, we learned about our correct dropping procedures. So as long as that ball first touches a point in that relief area and stays in that relief area, you've done everything correct and that ball is good to go. Play on. And again, we're talking about free relief, so there's no penalty here. So that top end, that ball's in a marked ground under repair area. In that situation, it's clear that the nearest point's going to be behind that ground under repair. To the left, clearly is going to be farther away. To the right, it's going to be farther away. Again, making sure your feet aren't touching the ground under repair, that swing won't impact it and the ball won't be in it. And since we're in the fairway here, we get a full half circle of relief area. So left, right, and behind. And as long as we drop that ball and it stays in that area, we've checked off all the boxes and this ball is good to go. The bottom one, our relief area, same procedure, just looks a little bit different. So starting with the ball one, that ball is on the cart path, so clearly it's interfering with it. Assuming a right-handed player for this example, we find where that ball would be once you're figuring out what club you'd use for this swing, and it's right off the cart path for a right-handed player. It would look completely different for a left-handed player. We get our one club length to the left and behind. Again, we don't get our full circle because we have to make sure we're taking complete relief when we're taking abnormal course condition relief. So if you were still interfering with the cart path with either the ball, your swing, or your stance, you have not checked that box, and it would not be a correct procedure. For ball two, we see that the ball's lying off the cart path, but our stance would be impacted by the cart path. So again, we find the nearest point no closer to the hole that we have complete relief, no interference from that cart path. We get our one club length relief area and we drop that ball in that relief area and play on. There's a good chance that if you were a left-handed player playing ball two, you would have no interference from that cart path and you just play that ball as it lies. The last part of this rule, Rule 16, is about embedded ball. So we'll cover what that looks like here. A player's ball is embedded when it's in its own pitch mark as a result of the player's previous stroke and where part of the ball is below the level of the ground. The when the rules changed in 2019, they did a really good job of adding these pictures, both for relief and for examples like this of what we're looking for when we're talking about embedded ball. So that first one is clearly part of that ball is underneath the ground. The second one, it's caused that indentation that's clearly broken the ground. But that third one, maybe it's a little bit of rough and that ball looks like it's embedded, but it's just sitting down deep in the rough, but it hasn't actually broke the ground. That one would not be embedded and you would not be entitled to relief in that situation. But the first two, since they've both clearly done those two things, assuming it's the player's own pitch mark and as a result of the player's previous stroke, we're good. It's broke that surface of the ground. It's embedded. No problem there. That last sentence just kind of calls out it doesn't have to physically be touching the soil. There could be loose impediments or grass in between, whether it's pine straw or grass clippings or whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be like the first image where the ball is touching the ground or the dirt. Um, but do know that a bedded ball does have to be only in the general area. There's no other area of the course that you're going to be granted embedded ball. So in bunkers, we talk about kind of those those bad lies in the bunkers where it looks like the ball is embedded. Under the rules of golf, it's not possible since it's not that bunker is not part of the general area. It's its own part of the course. Same thing for penalty areas. If your ball looks like that first image, but it's within that red line or between red stakes, unfortunately, you're not able to get free relief from embedded ball in that situation. But again, you would be able to go under the penalty area rules. There is a little bit of an exception here, but it kind of makes sense that if the ball is embedded on the putting green, that bottom image, a player is always allowed to mark the spot of their ball, lift, clean, and repair that damage that the ball caused, and then replace the ball right on the spot. So it's kind of the general area and the putting green are kind of the two exceptions here where you are allowed to get relief. The putting green, you're always allowed to mark the spot, lift, clean, repair, and put that ball back. So no problem there. But the general area is a little bit different in how we proceed. Embedded ball relief, our relief option here looks a little bit similar to what we were just talking about with abnormal course conditions, with one main difference. And the main difference here is that reference point. We aren't talking about nearest point of complete relief because we're talking about embedded ball. So the reference point for embedded ball is just the spot in the general area that's right behind where the ball is embedded. So that image there, that ball is clearly embedded. It's broken the surface of the ground. Let's assume it's in the fairway. So that spot right behind it is our starting point. That's our reference point. And from there, we do get one club length left, right, and behind, assuming it's all in the general area. And it's no nearer than the hole. So again, we're talking about free relief. So similar procedure, but for embedded ball, the main difference is that reference point is telling you it's that spot in the general area right behind where that ball is embedded. We've reached our first slide for questions. Caleb, do we have any questions at this point?
Yes, we have some questions, some good ones too. Someone asked if can snow or ice be considered temporary water? And that is true. Yes, snow and ice can be temporary water. And if you look in the temporary water definition, um, you can be able to find that it states that snow and ice can be temporary water, so you would get relief. And then someone also asked, is water from a lake that is overflowing its normal boundaries considered temporary water? And that's also true. It is also temporary water, so you would get relief, so long as it is in the general area. If your ball is in the penalty area and there's, water in that area, you would not get relief. So it does, you do get that relief so long as it is in the general area. And then also one other question is embedded ball relief. Someone asked, do you get embedded ball relief from areas that include rough? And then yes, that is also true. You do get relief so long as it is also in the general area. And that's all we have here, Amanda.
Perfect. Yep. Remember that general area term kind of encompasses a lot of different things, and the rules don't call out to fairways or rough. It's all in that one term of general area, so they don't define those two things. Our next section here is going to be again free relief, but this time it's going to be about moving the object out of the way, and we'll see kind of those examples. First up, impediments. So we may have used this term the last couple weeks, but we're finally getting to what are these? What actually are loose impediments and what can I do with them? So a loose impediment is any unattached natural object, such as a lot of different things, stones, grass, leaves, branches, sticks, even dead animals and animal waste are considered loose impediments, where worms, insects, similar animals that can be easily removed, clumps of compacted soil, including aeration plugs. All of these things are loose impediments. So a lot of different things. The key word for these are unattached, so loose, and natural. We're talking about natural objects that you'd find out there when we're talking about loose impediments. We do have some exceptions or some special cases in this example here. So sand and loose soil, those are calling out that they are not loose impediments. The rules do not allow you just to move sand and loose soil under loose impediments anywhere on the golf course. We know that on putting greens, we're allowed to move those, but anywhere else on the course, you kind of have to just leave them as they are. Dew, frost, and water, again, not loose impediments, just different things on the course that you're not able to use a towel to mop up any dew or water that may be in your way. Snow and natural ice, that you have an option with those. So if you are playing when there's snow on the ground, great. I'm not that person. You're not going to find me on the golf course when it's snowing or there's still snow on the ground, but I know everyone's a little bit different. For snow and natural ice, you do have an option. They are considered loose impediments if you want them to, meaning you can move those out of the way. Or if you find them on the ground, as that second picture, you're in that bunker there, you can treat them as temporary water. So you kind of can decide if you want to just move that snow out of the way or do you want to move yourself out of the way using that rule we just covered in Rule 16. Spider webs, they are considered loose impediments, even though obviously webs are attached to something. The rules say you can kind of move those out of the way and use a towel or whatever you want to get that out of the way. And then the last one, kind of funny, not sure it happens too often, but if you have a live insect on your ball, it is considered a loose impediment, even though it is stuck to the ball. So in that case, a live insect, you're able to kind of pick that guy off to save his life and put him off to the side and play your ball as it lies. We can move loose impediments anywhere on the course, not a problem, no penalty, but we do have to be careful. We'll see that it could result in a penalty if you do cause your ball to move, but you are entitled to move them, those leaves as this player is doing, or any of those objects we just talked about. And there's no right or wrong way to move them out of the way. You can move them with your hand, your foot, any equipment, get help from others. Might sound a little funny, but let's just say there's a huge branch that fell off a tree in a storm and it's sitting right near your ball and it would impact your shot. You can get help from other people to go ahead and move that unattached branch out of the way, even though it's large. Or if there's just a little section of that large branch that fell, you can just break that part off. If that's the only part that's going to bother you, perfectly fine to break it off. But again, just making sure that it is loose, unattached, and natural. This ball moves as a result to moving a loose impediment out of the way, there is going to be a penalty in this case. So loose impediments are not free game. You aren't able to move them at all times. You do have to move them with a little bit of a risk. So if your ball was to move and we're moving a loose impediment, whether it's pine straw or leaves or acorns or stones, you would get a one-stroke penalty, and you just have to put that ball back. If you didn't know exactly where it was, the rules say you estimate it. But on the putting green and the teeing area, you don't get a penalty. Those are kind of the two protected areas that we have a little bit more lenience when we come to moving loose impediments. Again, on the putting green, we have that accidental movement is no penalty now. So that kind of falls under this. If you were to move a leaf that moved your ball, no problem. Just put that ball back where it was on the putting green. Any questions about loose impediments? Caleb?
Sorry, I had myself muted. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Someone asked if a ball is in a divot below the ground, can this be considered embedded? And then in order to know if our ball is embedded, we can look at the definition of embedded. And then if you look here, it says when a player's ball is in its own pitch mark made it as a result of the previous stroke. So we have to determine if that ball is in its own pitch mark made from the previous stroke. If it's just from another person shot that hit it a couple of holes ago, then are just in kind of tough luck. So it has to be from the previous stroke in its own pitch mark. Another embedded ball question there, man. I think we're all good.
So we'll keep moving on to our next part of moving objects out of the way, and we're going to talk about movable obstructions. So we covered immovable obstructions, and we're talking about 16, those artificial objects that aren't able to be moved. Well, these are now artificial objects that are easily moved. So again, artificial is the key term here. That can be moved with reasonable effort and without causing any damage to the obstruction or the course. Most common, we have rakes around bunkers, easily moved, not meant to be there to be part of the challenge of playing the game. Another example is that player's towel, or maybe it's another player's towel that fell off the bag and they didn't realize it. But there are some things that are not considered movable obstructions, even if you can pick them up and move them out of the way. And one of those examples is an integral object. They're deemed by the committee things that are meant to be part of the challenge of playing that hole or that course, and you would not get free relief from playing from an integral object. Boundary objects, same thing. If they're white stakes that are lining a property line, you can easily pull those out of the ground. It's not a big deal to move them. However, the rules tell you that boundary objects are fixed. You are not able to pull those out of the ground and play from them if your ball's up against it. It's kind of one of those things that you just kind of have to leave them in place and you're not going to get free relief from them. And then the last one is if it is a immovable obstruction. So if something's considered to be immovable, you have to treat it under Rule 16. You wouldn't be pointing to this Rule 15 in order to get relief. Obstruction anywhere on or off the course and can do so anyway. So a little bit different than immovable obstructions. If it is movable, even if it is out on not on the course, you're able to move it. So back to my example where the ball's lying inbounds, but very close to a property line. But let's say there's now a garden hose that's right on the edge of the property line too, or maybe it's spilling over into the course and it's in your way. Since it's the movable obstructions are allowed to be moved either on or off the course, you can go ahead and move that hose out of the way. Put it back in that person's yard far enough away that it's not going to interfere with your swing. And great pictures in this book. We're going to talk about moving the movable obstructions. So in this example, a player's ball is resting against that rake. So what we're going to do is we're going to move that rake and see if the ball moves. If it does, we're fine. We're in the no penalty rule here, so not a problem. But we just need to get that ball back in that spot where it was resting against the rake, or where it was when it was resting against the rake. So you don't need to mark it in this situation. You can if you want to, not a big deal. But just pick up that movable obstruction. If the ball moves, put it back. No problem, no penalty, and you're good to go. On the contrary, if a ball is lying on a movable obstruction, for example, that maybe this towel was abandoned by a couple groups ahead, Your ball just happens to find that towel. Again, free relief, no problem here, but we are going to lift the ball, lift the movable obstruction, but we're going to drop in this instance. So a little bit different. If it's resting against a movable obstruction, we're going to put that ball back if it moves. But if it's resting on a movable obstruction in anywhere except the putting green, we are going to drop it. So again, we need our relief area. Reference points that spot where it was right under that movable obstruction. If you're not 100% sure, you just estimate that point, no big deal. You get 1 club length, but again, have to stay in the same area of the course. So if you are in the general area, stay in the general area. Maybe it's in a bunker. You need to stay in that bunker in order to keep with free relief. And it can't be near the hole. So like everything that we talk about, you can't be near the hole. Your ball happens to find that pesky towel that's left on the putting green now, and it's on the towel. Again, similar. Pick up the ball, pick up the towel, movable obstruction. But now we're just going to place that ball, since we're on the putting green, we're placing it where that ball was underneath the towel. Again, if it was something else and you weren't 100% sure where the ball was, no problem. Just estimate that spot and place it on the putting green. Action there. Caleb will check in and see if we have any other questions before we keep moving.
Yes, we did have a question, another loose impediment question. Someone asked, what if your ball moves if you're removing a bug from it? So a small bug would be considered a loose impediment here. So you did cause your ball to move, so it would be a penalty stroke there, and then you would place your ball back on the original spot.
Yep, exactly.
And
You
that's
can
it.
try to save the bug, but you might want to just leave it if it's going to cause your ball to move. All right, we'll keep moving. We're going to switch gears now and talk about our penalty area or penalty relief options, starting with penalty areas. So anything with penalty areas you can find in Rule 17. We first have to understand what they are. So another defined term here, penalty area is any body of water on the course, whether it's marked by the committee or not, and it can be a whole bunch of things: seas, ponds, ditches, rivers, lakes, anything that can hold water, even if it does not contain water at that time, would be able to be called the penalty area under the rules. And something that was added when the rules changed back in 2019, you can now mark any part of the courses the committee wants as a penalty area. So before it was a little bit strict, it kind of said it needed to hold water in order for that area to be marked as a penalty area. But the rules became a little bit more relaxed and now say the committee has free reign. If they want to mark a side of a hole that has just a bunch of trees that never holds water, but because it'll make play easier and help their players out, they can go ahead and do so. So this has become more common as we've gone to golf courses, that a lot more areas are marked as penalty areas, because it does give the players more options if their ball is lost in there. A player may play the ball as it lies in a penalty area. No problem here. We can always have that option. We can always play the ball as it lies, or we can take penalty relief. We'll kind of see what those options are in a couple slides here. Has more options on what they can do. So that if they want to play their ball from the penalty area, again, no problem, no penalty to them. And they can do a whole bunch of things that you can do anywhere else on the course. Go ahead and move those loose impediments. But again, just be careful, because if your ball were to move, you would get that 1-stroke penalty and have to put the ball back. You can make practice swings in penalty areas. You can ground your club. You can even go touch the water if you want to see how deep it is. All of these things are allowed from the penalty area. We have 2 different types of penalty areas. We have yellow penalty areas, usually marked with yellow lines and stakes. We get 2 relief options if we wanted to take relief from yellow penalty areas. And then we have red penalty areas, probably a little bit more common, but red penalty areas, again, marked with red lines or red stakes. They just give the player an extra option, which we'll see in our relief options here. So you get 3 options with red penalty areas as opposed to just 2 when we're talking about yellow. Your option all the time and in penalty areas is stroke and distance relief. So this will come up in the next few sections as we go through this presentation as well. But stroke and distance is always an option to the player, and it just means they can always go back to where they last played from for 1 penalty stroke. When we're talking about penalty area relief, all the options that we go through are one penalty stroke, and stroke and distance is always an option to the player. So what we're gonna do is it depends on where we last played from. So if our shot was played from the teeing area, we just go back to that teeing area and we get that whole entire teeing area. As we learned in week one, what that defined area is, you find the two tee markers, two club lengths back from that, and you get that imaginary box that the player is entitled to play from. And you can tee that ball up if you are playing from the teeing area. There's no problem with that. Our second option, if we were playing our previous stroke from either the general area, a bunker, or maybe it was from a different penalty area and we wanted to try those shots again, one penalty stroke. But what we're going to do is find that spot where that ball was last played from. Again, if you're not 100% sure, just estimate it. And we get one club length in every direction from there. So we see that the fairway, we just have that full right, left, and behind relief area in the fairway. Maybe we tried to play from that bunker further up and we still have to go drop it in that bunker. On the putting green, again, not as common, but still an option to you. Maybe you hit that ball on the putting green, hit it just a little too firm, it rolled down the hill and into the penalty area. You can take stroke and distance. Go ahead and just place that ball back on the putting green where it was. So a little bit different. You just place that ball on the putting green if that's where your previous stroke was. Our next option for both yellow and red penalty areas is our back on the line relief. So I will call out that this did change a little bit a couple years ago. So this is probably one of the newer, bigger changes that we've had, but still similar to what we've seen before. So again, we're gonna have to go through and figure out what is our back on the line relief. So the player is gonna be able to drop either their original ball or another ball outside the penalty area, keeping the estimated point where that ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area between them and the hole. So essentially what we do here is we say, okay, where does your ball last cross that edge? That's circled in a red circle there. Okay, we're going to find the flag stick and line those 2 points up and go as far back on that line as we want. And that's where we're going to drop the ball. And now we need to drop the ball on the line. That's the biggest change when we're talking about back on the line relief. We're dropping the ball on the line, and then we'll see that a relief area gets created. First, every relief option we've talked to up to this point, we figure out what our relief area is, and we kind of have it all mapped out before we drop that ball. When we're talking about back on the line relief, it's a little bit different. So again, we find that spot, line it up with the flag stick, go as far back as you want, pick a yardage that you want. Maybe this player's favorite yardage is 80 yards, 100 yards. That's where they're most comfortable. Drop that ball on that 100-yard mark on the line. And once that ball touches the ground, it creates the relief area. And this is the only option that has a complete circle for the relief area. So you get one club length from that spot where that ball touched on the line in any direction. So essentially we drop that ball, chances are it might move a little bit, but as long as it stays within one club length of that point on the line, you're in the relief area, no problem, even if it moves a little bit more forward. This is the one rule where the ball can roll a little bit forward, but as long as we're within that one club length, we're still in the relief area and we're good to go with our one penalty stroke. We do call out, it just can't be closer to the hole than that estimated point where the ball last crossed the edge. A lot of the times it's going to be very hard to get forward of that point when we're taking our relief. And it needs to be in the same area of the course, except for the same penalty area. So we can't drop it in the penalty area we're taking relief from. And that last, a little bit confusing, but it needs to stay in the same area of the course that the ball first touched when dropped. So in this situation, let's say that player is back on the line relief. The spot that they liked is within one club length of a bunker. They can choose to drop in the bunker if they want to, no problem there. But know that if you drop it in the bunker, it needs to stay in the bunker in order for you to drop it correctly. But if we drop it in the general area and it rolls into the bunker, well, now we've changed different areas of the course, and that's not going to be a satisfied drop. We would need to redrop the ball in that situation since it first touched the general area but ended up in a bunker. Two options, our stroke and distance and our back on the line, are the only two options you have when we're talking about yellow penalty areas. This third option, the lateral relief option, is only if a ball is in a red penalty area. You get this additional option. You can still do stroke and distance and back on the line if you like, but the rules do allow you to take lateral relief. And what we're going to do is again find that point where the ball last crossed the edge of the red penalty area. And we're going to get 2 club lengths in this situation. So we don't get just one. This is the only time that we're going to get 2 is when we're taking lateral relief. So you see again that ball estimated to cross that line right on the line there. He found that, measured his 2 club lengths, no closer to the hole. And these relief areas could be as big as a quarter circle to as small as kind of what he's standing in, that kind of pie shape, just based on the way the hole is, and just making sure you're no closer to the hole than where your ball last crossed. Kind of cover it with this graphic here one more time. That player plays from the teeing area, crosses at point X, and lands in the red penalty area. Again, for 1 penalty stroke, they can go back to the tee that ball back up if they want to, and play on. The second option, back on the line, we find that spot X, line it up with the flag stick, and go as far back as you want. Again, we have to make sure we're not in that penalty area still, so it is farther behind the penalty area. We drop that ball on the line and it creates our 1 circle relief area, 1 club length in any direction, no, even if it is closer to the hole in that situation. And then our third option, our lateral relief, we find that spot where it last crossed at point X. We measure our 2 club lengths, making sure we're not closer to the hole. And we get that kind of almost quarter circle in this situation relief area where we can drop the ball for 1 penalty stroke and play on. A lot of information there, but do we have any questions on penalty areas?
We do have quite a bit more questions about movable obstruction, so I will touch on those quickly. Someone asked, what about 100-yard and 150-yard markers? Can I move them? What if my ball is up against it? Yes, these are considered movable obstructions, and you can remove them. And if it causes your ball to move, you just need to place your ball back to where it originally was for no penalty. And then someone also was wondering about red stakes and can you move those? Yes, you can move red penalty stakes. These are also movable obstructions, so you can move them. You, however, cannot move white out of bounds stakes as these are boundary objects and they must stay in place.
Yep. For those big posts, sometimes every course is a little bit different. So most of the time they are movable. I will say in this case, if it's not easily movable and you can't get it out of the ground, treat it as immovable. It's still an artificial object that's not intended to be part of playing the hole. So you kind of, if you can move it, great, it's movable. But if you can't, just know that you would still get free relief from that situation if your ball were to hit it. No problem there. Move into unplayable balls. So we're kind of going to skip rule 18. We're going to jump to rule 19 first and discuss unplayable ball. We have options here. We see what it is and when we can use this rule. My favorite is the player is the only person who can decide to treat their ball as unplayable. No one can tell you otherwise. That ball could be sitting in a spot that clearly you can make a stroke at it. But for some reason you don't want to, no one can tell you you can't use this rule. It is an option to the player, and they're the only ones who can decide to treat their ball as unplayable. Unplayable ball relief is allowed anywhere on the course, excuse me, except for in a penalty area. So we just covered those penalty area rules. If your ball were to be in a penalty area, you wanted to play it, fine, but you aren't able to take unplayable ball relief to stay in the penalty area. The rules are going to say, hey, we're giving you options to get out of the penalty area. We're going to let you use those rules, but we're not going to let you double dip and use the unplayable ball rule relief rules too. When we are talking about unplayable ball, the one thing that we do need to make sure of is that we identify our golf ball. So if we are going to take an unplayable ball, maybe it's stuck in a tree. If you can identify it with a rangefinder or binoculars, or if you have someone who actually saw that ball land in that tree and can say that 100% is your ball, you're good. If for any reason you can't identify the ball, you're not able to use the unplayable ball rule, and we'll see kind of why when we get to the relief. Options here is as penalty areas. We do have three options when we're talking about unplayable ball in the general area. Again, stroke and distance, I've said it before. It's always an option to you. And again, it's an option for one penalty stroke here as well. Back on the line relief, very similar to what we just discussed with penalty areas, except for one major difference. And that is that the starting point for the relief to determine the reference point and the relief area for unplayable ball is where the ball lies itself. So that is why identifying your golf ball is the most important thing and the way you have to be able to identify it in order to use this rule. If you're not able to identify your golf ball, this unplayable ball option is not available to you since it's the starting point for all relief procedures except for stroke and distance. So back to the line, we start where with the ball actually lies. We line it up with the flag stick and go as far back on that line as we want. Again, we're dropping on the line. It creates our relief area once it hits the ground. And as long as it stays within that one club length in any direction, we're good. One penalty stroke from there. And our third option is again, lateral relief option. So we're measuring from where that ball lies, two club lengths out to the left, to the right, to the behind. No problem. And we're dropping that ball in that huge relief area. One thing I do like to note is this image here, that two club lengths does get the player out of that tree or bush that they're in. If this ball is in a unmarked area and you find it and you're not able to play it, maybe you want to measure out your relief options and figure out where you're going to be playing from. Because two club lengths may not necessarily get you out from that wooded area or those trees. It may maybe back on the line is a better option depending on the angles, or maybe stroke and distance is a better option if it gets you out of that area. Just know that unplayable ball relief doesn't mean that you're always getting away from that area you're taking relief from. There's a good chance that that ball that's number 3 there, it could roll right behind that tree that's shaded a little bit behind where it is now. It's still, as long as you dropped it in that area and it stayed there, you've satisfied the relief rules. You have to take the one stroke penalty, but you may want to take unplayable ball again. It's not always going to get you into a spot that you're going to be comfortable playing the golf ball. When we're talking about bunkers, we do get an additional option for unplayable ball. So again, bunkers are an area we can take unplayable ball. Penalty areas are the only spot we're not allowed to. So that ball is right up against the lip of the bunker. It is touching the sand, so it is in the bunker. If we wanted to take relief, this player played their previous stroke from the fairway, it looks like. So they can go back, stroke and distance for one penalty stroke. If they wanted to do the back on the line relief or the lateral relief, they would have to stay in the bunker in order to keep their stroke count at only a penalty stroke count at 1. So back on the line again, we measure from where that ball lies with the flag stick, go back, keep it in the bunker, and dropping it. In our third one, because we have to keep the ball in the bunker, we may not get our full 2 club lengths half circle there. So we see up on the top of that bunker, we can't drop it in the general area in that grassy spot because it's not in the bunker. It's not an option to us. So if that ball, where that ball is in that bunker, you do have a little bit of options there with the lateral relief and the back on the line. But let's say that that ball was embedded further in the back of the bunker. So we're now talking about, let's say that ball is embedded back in here. Our options just became a lot more condensed. So our back on the line option would put you still in the bunker, but you don't have a huge area to work with. And same with back on the line. There's probably space for you to drop in the bunker and keep it in the bunker, but not as much as if that ball was in the front. So that's why the rules say we give you another option. There's a fourth option here, but it is going to cost you an extra penalty stroke for a total of 2. And that is we're going to allow you to get out of the bunker back on the line for an extra shot. So essentially, we can take that ball, line up the flag stick, now go outside that bunker, option 4 there, dropping it on the line. And as long as it stays within that 1 club length area, and just add on 2 penalty strokes and play on. So if your previous stroke was from outside the bunker, you're fine to take that as an option for 1 penalty stroke, but otherwise your back on the line and lateral relief have to stay in the bunker to keep it at 1 penalty stroke. Or you can do back on the line outside the bunker for 2 penalty strokes. But just to note, there's no two penalty stroke option for lateral. The only lateral relief we're going to grant for unplayable ball is keeping it in the bunker. Shins.
Yes, Amanda, we have a few questions here. Someone was asking about lateral relief area. When taking lateral relief, can the player stand in the penalty area after dropping into their relief area when taking lateral relief? In Rule 17, you can do this. A player may stand in a penalty area to play a ball outside of the penalty area, and this is including after taking relief from the penalty area. So that answers that question there. And I think that's it there, Amanda.
Okay, perfect. Yep, so a little bit different when we were talking about abnormal course conditions. We have that nearest point of complete relief. Not the case when we're talking about penalty area relief. So if you wanted to drop the ball close to the penalty area line and you know your feet are going to be standing in it, as long as that ball hits a spot in the relief area and stays there, you're good to go, even if it means your feet are still in the penalty area. We're going to jump back to Rule 18. We have a couple slides in this rule, and then you'll be good to go out on the course. So starting with a ball that is lost. A lost ball is not found within 3 minutes, and that time for 3 minutes starts when either the player or their caddy starts looking for it. The rest of this kind of calls out if it is a partner format, the player's partner or the partner's caddy would also start that clock if they were to be looking for that ball. So just know that we have 3 minutes to search for our ball now. That's part of the rule. So what happens if that ball is found in 3 minutes and 1 second? Unfortunately, that ball is considered lost and you can't play that ball any longer. And we have, when is a ball out of bounds? So a ball is out of bounds when all of it is outside the boundary edge of the course. So we have examples of white stakes and white lines defining the golf course here. The way we're going to figure this out is we're always going to use the course side edge of those lines or stakes. So we see that line from green to gray. It is on the course side edge. So if that ball is all the way over that line, whether it's imaginary or painted, it would be considered out of bounds. If a piece of that ball is still touching the course, such as the example when it's lying on the line, but half on the line, half on the course, that ball is considered inbounds and you are still allowed to play it. But once that ball fully crosses over that line, course side edge of that line, it is considered out of bounds in that case. What do we do when our ball is lost or out of bounds? Well, the rules say your only option is really stroke and distance. We have to go back to where we last played from, and we've talked about this throughout the last two rules. So we won't cover this again, but it is one penalty stroke, and you must use stroke and distance option. You can play the original ball if you do find it after that 3 minute mark, or if it is out of bounds and you can reach it, or you can use a different ball, no problem there. We do have a model local rule option. So this option is only available if the committee puts this model local rule in effect. So we will cover it because it is common, especially in casual play or maybe not super competitive tournaments. Those higher championships, you're not really going to see this alternative to stroke and distance. In those, such as our championships, you will only have the option of stroke and distance if your ball is lost or out of bounds. But if you play in any of our one-day events, those kind of more casual events, this is an option to you. We do allow the model local rule to be used. And essentially what it does is it's a quicker way to play stroke and distance without physically having to go back to the tee. So this option is 2 penalty strokes, but it's the same as if you were to use the stroke and distance option. Essentially, it assumes that the player is going to hit a second ball near where their ball is lost or out of bounds, but they're going to let them get all the way to the fairway. They're going to assume that you hit a second better shot. So in our first image on the left, that ball is lost somewhere in those trees. We're not 100% sure. What we're going to do is estimate that point and find that same yardage on the nearest fairway or nearest closely mown area. From there, the rules give us 2 club lengths, and we get 2 club lengths on either side here. So we estimate where it's lost and we get 2 club lengths, and then we get all the way to the fairway or that closely mown area and we get 2 club lengths. And that shaded area all the way back is your relief area. So you kind of have a lot more wiggle room here on getting that ball back in play for 2 penalty strokes. And then our second example, that ball clearly is out of bounds. It crossed that line at point A. We're going to estimate where it last crossed that out of bounds line, find that yardage. And again, we're going to go all the way to the nearest fairway or closely mown area and find that same yardage. And then we're going to get 2 more club lengths into the fairway. And we see that spot from point A all the way to point B plus those 2 club lengths becomes our relief area. So again, it's more generous, which is why it's used for more casual play and not recommended for those higher level competitions. But it's a great option for everyday play to help with pace of play to keep everyone moving along. Just take your 2 strokes as if you were to play stroke and distance, drop it in the fairway and move on. All right, we'll take a couple questions here. I know we have one more quick section and I know we're getting close to our hour.
Yes, I just wanted to say if we have any PGA members in this evening's webinar, if you guys could go ahead and put in your numbers, that would be great. So you guys could get your education points there. And then I think we can move on to the last section, Amanda.
Perfect. Section here again, as Caleb mentioned, I know we want to try to keep this in an hour, but we do want to answer your questions as well. So we'll hang out for a couple minutes once we do finish tonight's presentation and help answer those questions through the chat feature. Or if we don't get to your question tonight, as Caleb mentioned, we are able to email you your answers. So we'll make sure everyone's questions do get an answer at some point. The last 18 is about provisional ball. So assuming we're not using that model local rule, provisional ball is something that we would encourage players to get into the habit of doing. So playing another ball just in case that first ball might be out of bounds or lost outside of a penalty area. So those are the 2 main things. If we know or think that our ball might be lost outside of a penalty area or out of bounds, play a provisional. There's no harm in doing it. It's going to help you save time and keep pace of play moving. So some situations where you would be encouraged to play a provisional ball when that original ball went toward a boundary and might be out of bounds. You don't know. You're not 100% sure it is. You think there's a chance it could still be lying on the course. Play a provisional just in case. When your original ball went somewhere on the course outside of a penalty area where you don't think you'll find it, again, play a provisional. There's no harm in playing a second ball there. And the last one, when your original ball might have gone into a penalty area, but it also might be somewhere you cannot find it outside the penalty area. If you hit it toward a penalty area and there's maybe a lot of trees or a lot of high grass, and you're just not sure if it's in the penalty area or it could be also in that high grass, go ahead and play provisional. The rules allow you to do so. It really just prevents you from playing a provisional if you know matter of fact that your ball is in a penalty area. If you saw a splash or if there's nowhere else that ball could be except for in that penalty area, don't play a provisional in that situation. Just go on up and take your penalty area relief. Some things you need to do, make sure you're announcing that you are playing a provisional ball. Say something, you have to say something out loud. You have to announce that you are playing a provisional ball, or otherwise clearly indicate that you're playing under Rule 18.3. So it's not enough just to say, I'm playing another ball or I'm playing again. Really get into the habit of using that word provisional. That tells everyone else that, okay, this player's second ball is a just in case ball. If we can't find the first one, we can go ahead and continue play with the provisional. I'd also encourage players, if they are going to play a provisional, to mark it a different way or play a different number. The last thing you want is to hit 2 balls in the same area and not be able to tell them apart. It could happen, and in that case, the rules are going to say, okay, well, you get to pick one, but it's going to be the provisional. So we are going to just proceed under stroke and distance, add the 1 stroke, but pick a ball and let's move on. And we are allowed to play the provisional ball all the way up to the estimated spot where the player's ball is likely to be. So this player off the tee hits that ball left into those trees. He's not sure if he'll find it or not, so he plays a provisional to point A. That's great. He plays that ball from point A to point B. It is still a provisional ball since it has not been played from a spot more forward than where it's estimated to be lost. So that player can play that ball from point A to point B, still a provisional. then walk on over to those trees and he has 3 minutes to try to find it. If he does find it, he does have to continue play with the original ball. He can't decide that, ooh, I don't actually like where this ball ended up. Just going to continue play with my provisional. Not allowed under the rules. So you don't have to search for a ball. The rules allow you just to keep playing with a provisional ball, but you do need to play it from a spot more forward. So once you play from spot B to the putting green, that ball now becomes the ball in play. So if you don't want to find it or you don't want to search, no problem. You don't have to. But something does need to happen in order to make that provisional ball be the ball in play. Whether that 3 minutes search time expires or you play it from a spot that's more forward than where that original ball lies. And our last ones, when do we need to abandon a provisional ball? Well, the first one I just said is when the original ball is found on the course within the 3 minute search time. A player cannot play the provisional ball and they need to just proceed under the original, or if they want to take relief at that point, they would be able to take relief under the rules. So if they don't like where that ball ended up, they don't want to play it from there, they're probably taking a stroke and distance or unplayable relief, but under no circumstance can they just go ahead and keep playing with their provisional ball. And the last example, the player finds their ball in or is virtually certain that the ball is in a penalty area. Because we didn't know that it was in a penalty area, we're fine. We played our provisional like we were supposed to. But now that we get up there, we're like, oh, okay, there's this ball really in the penalty area. There's nowhere it could be. You have to abandon the provisional ball and go ahead and take penalty area rule or play the ball if it is playable. All right, well, we'll take your questions in a minute. I do just want to wrap everything up. Again, if you've joined us the last 3 weeks, thank you all for being with us. We hope you've learned something about the rules of golf, either in this presentation or the previous two. As Caleb mentioned, we do have our previous slide decks and presentations on our website under vsga.org resource center, and in the rules section you can see both week 1, week 2, and at some point tomorrow we'll post week 3 this presentation as well. So if you wanted to share it with your friends or anyone else who might find it interesting, please feel free to do so. The USGA also has a great rules page. I'd highly recommend, if you want to continue learning about the rules of golf, go to their rules section. The Rules 101 class is kind of what we've based our last 3 weeks on, so that might be a place for you to start and kind of recap everything. They do a good job of asking questions throughout their sections and kind of making sure that you understand kind of the basics. And then our Roving Official website, again, another place that you can go for rules content and rules quizzes. If you wanted to go ahead and get questions or answer questions on the rules of golf. We're always an option for resources as well. Feel free to reach out to any of our competition staff, or we do have on our website a contact us page, and the rules is an option. Chances are your questions are going to come to me, and I'd be happy to answer any of your rules questions. We do have a rules quiz that'll be in our next Virginia Golfer magazine. So stay tuned for that if you do want to test your rules knowledge. It'll be 18 questions that you can submit online to kind of see how you did, and we'll go through them in the following magazine. But again, I'll give Caleb the option to answer any more questions. But thank you all for being with us tonight.